In a previous video, I described three geological phenomena that had been mentioned as possible causes for the terrible collapse of the condominium in Surfside. Those were sea level rise, saltwater intrusion, and subsidence. Since then, two others have emerged in the conversation about trying to understand what happened. That is the idea of exceptional tides and associated salt water, as well as a rise in the groundwater table. So in a few minutes, I'm going to discuss those processes and just what they mean and why they're being considered as we try to figure out just what happened. Again, my name is Randy Parkinson. I'm a PhD in marine geology and geophysics from the University of Miami. I'm a registered professional geologist in the state of Florida since 1988, a coastal geologist practicing in the state of Florida since 1982, and a research associate professor at Florida International University in Miami, Florida. So let's begin. In the previous video, I discussed sea level rise, saltwater intrusion, and subsidence as it related to possible contributions or were invoked in possibly helping us understand what caused the collapse of the Champlain Towers there in Surfside. There's a link to the video there. It's about 12 minutes. In this video, we're going to talk about some new phenomena that have been mentioned: exceptional tides, king tides, sunny day flooding, and rising groundwater. So first of all, here is the driving force: climate change and sea level rise. So this is a NOAA projection from the year 2000, which it's just set at 0, and then out to the year 2100. And here's the height above where it was in the year 2000. And you can see there's a broad array of projections from a low of about a foot to more than 8 feet. The reason for the uncertainty is because we don't know how much CO2 is going to be emitted into the atmosphere because of the combustion of fossil fuels. And since we don't know how much CO2 is in the atmosphere, we don't know how much the atmosphere will warm. And as a consequence, we don't know how much ice will melt or how warm the oceans will get. And as the oceans warm, they expand as well. So the rise is from melting ice and thermal expansion, but anywhere between 1 and 8 feet as of 2017. Now the tides oscillate around mean sea level. So as mean sea level rises, so do the elevations of the high tide and low tide. So this is simply a track of the high and low tides during these king tide events. Here's the trend in sea level. So you can see that the elevation of high tide is on average increasing, as is the elevation of the low tide, such that in the most recent measurement, the low tide elevation was higher than the king tide high elevation in 1995. So that translates then these exceptional tides on top of sea level rise causes the water to penetrate further inland and ever deeper, but it also disrupts infrastructure. For example, kayaking down the streets of Miami. Obviously, this isn't Venice. Miami was not designed to have water in it. And this is a consequence of a combination of sea level rise, king tides, and also the effect it has on infrastructure. So for example, in the top panel, normal conditions, the cross section, say this is the Atlantic Ocean, here's Miami Beach, and there's a storm drain. So when we get heavy rainfall events associated with hurricanes or whatever, the rain drains by gravity out into the ocean. But during exceptional tides, when they're a foot or two above normal, the water, the seawater actually comes in through the storm drain and floods the area. And certainly whatever rainfall is occurring can't escape, so it just exacerbates flooding by the tides and any rainfall that might be associated with that. As an example here, there's a storm drain, and seawater is coming out. And certainly if it rains, the rain isn't draining, so the salt water and it can't drain. And of course, now that is getting into the stormwater systems. It's getting into people's yards. It's getting into whatever kind of water delivery system, whatever your footers and foundations and sidewalks. And of course, this exacerbates the weathering of these phenomenon, and was not likely considered at the time these things were constructed, since many of these were constructed well before we had a good handle on climate change and sea level rise, which really started to emerge in the 1980s. A response to that, acknowledging, well, here's where the old road used to be, and here's where it is now. So the sidewalks and things are below road level as they try to protect areas from flooding, elevating the roads so they don't flood, but that comes at a cost because now the road is higher than your sidewalk or your entrance to your building. But certainly an example of the response to these obvious events associated with king tides, exceptional tides, sunny day flooding, and so forth. Now, another concern has to do with the water table itself. So here is a cross section. Here's the land, say, South Beach, here's the sea. And here's a condominium or structure built on land, might be a basement or parking garage, which is well above the water table. But in time two, when you get a sea level rise, it is the water table, which is floating on the salt water, rises too. See, there's the elevation before, and it's risen up, and the water table now is in some places above the base of the basement or parking garage. So obviously, if there's any cracks in the foundation, the exposed rebar, that's going to be in an area that was once had no groundwater impacts, or it may be in an area where there are saltwater impacts in there. So clearly it wasn't designed to deal with that, but because of sea level rise and the fact that groundwater is floating on that, the water table rises and change the characteristics of the sediments and soils and anything in it. So now we're up to 5 different phenomenon, which I hope I've at least given you a primer on. And here's contact information if you are interested in learning more. And of course, this is obviously on YouTube. Thank you.